It's crazy for a homeowner to embark on a home improvement project, a construction project, without a good contract, because a good contract signed with your general contractor at the outset of the project is really the only way that you can achieve predictable outcomes where you can hope to hit your budget, you can hope to have your project completed on time, and you can get to that win-win place of good work for a fair price. A lot of people will call me up in the middle of a construction project, and these will be, new people that will be reaching out to me for the first time, and they'll say, "My general contractor isn't meeting my expectations. They're late, or the work quality isn't up to snuff, or it's costing me more money than I expected." And the first question that I always ask is, how good is your construction contract? Is it a piece of paper that sets out in reasonably complete terms what is it that the contractor is going to be doing for you? What schedule? What price? What are the contingencies? Or did you just sign whatever piece of paper the general contractor put in front of you? And all too often, it's the case that these homeowners do not have a thoughtful construction contract, and they're coming to me asking for justice. They're saying it's not fair. Almost suggesting that a lawyer or a court or an arbitrator is going to be able to sort of superimpose, their own view of what's right, what's a just outcome. But what these homeowners don't understand is that, the courts that resolve business disputes like design and construction disputes, the arbitrators that resolve these kinds of disputes, they don't really have the power to brush aside the business deal struck by the parties and to replace it with their, subjective view of justice. The arbitrators and the judges that resolve these kinds of disputes, they don't worship at the altar of justice, they worship at the altar of predictability. And what they're going to do is they're going to take a look at the piece of paper that a homeowner signed and look for the key terms of the deal in the event of a dispute. And all too often, when somebody comes to me with disappointed expectations and they say, my project is late, I'll take a look at the contract, and there's really an incomplete thought or no thought at all about what are the deadlines for contractor performance. A lot of times people come to me and they'll say, I want to get rid of my contractor because the work is bad. And anytime that you're going to make a statement about, work being good or bad, you're comparing it against something. And if you have a thoughtful construction contract that sets out what the standard of performance is for the contractor, you can hold that yardstick up against the work that's being performed in the field, and you could see whether it's up to snuff. But 99% of the time, when people come to me mid-residential improvement project and they say the contractor's work is no good, what they're really saying is that their subjective expectations have been disappointed. And, there's no way that a judge or an arbitrator that's going to look at a construction contract that doesn't have a standard of performance in terms of quality and say, well, I know that it isn't part of the business deal, but I'm just going to rewrite the contract to say that it's the job of the GC, the contractor, to make the homeowner entirely happy. And if their subjective expectations are being disappointed, then the contractor must be doing something wrong. That's not what, they're going to do. It's also crazy to start a home improvement project without a good construction contract, because it's important to understand that there are a lot of Illinois laws that are specific to construction projects that are designed to help project owners, in this case homeowners, protect themselves. There are laws that set out rules for the payment process in terms of what kind of paperwork does a homeowner need to collect each month in order to make sure that they're not going to be subjected to much greater costs than they're planning to pay. There are laws that prescribe what you need to do when a contractor sends you a payment request, and laws that even automatically approve the payment request if an owner doesn't respond in a certain way and raise objections within a certain period of time. These are prompt payment laws. There are mechanics lien laws that really prescribe what an owner needs to do in terms of getting a subcontractor paid, regardless of whatever dispute the owner might have with the general contractor, so that the homeowner can avoid subcontractor liens. There's also a lot of other things like that that need to be spelled out in a good construction contract. It needs to be written down on a signed piece of paper before the project. And a lot of this has to do with insurance. It's counterintuitive, but it's not enough to just make sure that the architect has the right insurance and the contractor has the right insurance and the homeowner has the right insurance. In many cases, there need to be certain magic words, certain triggering words inside a construction contract that are going to play off the policy language to make the insurance coverage that a homeowner would want to have in place respond the way that they would want the policy to respond in the event that there's some kind of a fire or some sort of a dispute or a defect. And it's all too often that I will have good people, smart people, affluent people that are building a new home or, adding a room or, embarking on a residential improvement project that will come to me and say, I'm unhappy, help me out. And I'll look at the contract a lot of times and have to give the homeowners the bad news that it's very difficult for a construction lawyer like me to help course correct a project, to help kind of steer the contractor back onto the path of, proper performance, good work for a fair price, no disputes. It's difficult for me to do that if there isn't a good construction contract signed at the outset that sort of sets out the parties' expectations. If there's no business deal that's written down that I can help the owners, politely enforce against the general contractors so that they straighten up and fly right, it can put the homeowners in a tough spot. So, I think it's crazy for homeowners to start construction projects without good contracts. I can tell you that as a lawyer in Illinois that's been working on construction projects for more than 20 years, it is the one thing that you need as a project owner to make sure that you're going to have the sort of predictable outcomes that you're shooting for when you leap out and you begin a new residential construction project.